I'm a member of St Anne's Justice and Peace group in Newtown, so I'm kind of an interloper here as well. Being a member of the Rongotai electorate. So Annette King is the person that I have to speak to very severely to. Now, this year is United Nations Year of the Cooperative. I don't know how many people know that, but I think it's an opportune time where we can start thinking about making our assets, the ones that are up for sale at least, cooperatives. Let's think back to the time of the old power boards. Now they were a semi-cooperative in a way, in that we elected the power boards and so on. The power bills were not very high. For some people they might well have been, but for most people they were reasonable. Also, any of the profits that happened to be left over went back into the community. So I think that what we should be really considering, something positive, saying to the government, all right, you really want the ordinary mums and dads to be associated with our assets. Well, why not make them into a cooperative? One of the most successful cooperatives in the world is Fonterra. Not perfect, mind you, but there's a good example. Now, another thing I think we ought to be doing is saying to those opposition parties who vehemently, at least it appears to be at election time, opposed to the sale of assets, what they can do is something very simple. Say that once they get back into power, they will buy back all the shares that were sold at 1 cent each, no more and no less. Now, it's quite possible to do that. Any government, if they really want to, could actually declare through first of all order in council, then go through parliamentary procedure, etc., and say that's what we're going to do. So anybody who wants to buy the shares, that's your warning. Don't, because we're going to buy them back. No more than 1 cent and no less than 1 cent. I'm also a member of the National Consultative Committee for Disarmament. Again, not many people know that we've had such an organisation. I'm also a member of the United Nations Association. And it was mentioned before about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. And this has been very much driven by America. And unfortunately, as it was mentioned before, that any asset sales and going off into private hands, the shares, if people upset this agreement, can be sued. But what interests me more is the fact that the military implications, okay, we're not really even talking about it, but that is something else to be considered if anybody wants to bring up the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. There are all kinds of implications there. But another thing that this government is pushing is the fact that competition is beneficial. When we know that competition, certainly in the private area, actually increases prices, it doesn't bring prices down. Initially they might, but over time they actually increase prices. Competition certainly in capitalistic terms is highly destructive. And we see what's happening with New Zealand Aid. Now some of you again may not know about New Zealand Aid, but that is the government's arm of helping people overseas, particularly in the South Pacific and Papua New Guinea and places like that, usually administrated by NGOs, people like the Child Fund and UNICEF and so on. But what the government is now doing is saying, look, competition is the best way. We've got to go off and promote competition within the South Pacific Islands in particular, and using business models to do this. And this is exactly what they're trying to present to us here, this business model which has failed over and over and over again. Okay, the only successful businesses tend to be Apple and the big corporates like that, who tend to cheat their way to where they are now, as we're beginning to find out. And so there are so many areas that we've really got to examine to see where this particular government is coming from. And so we've got to attack them from various different angles. That's why I brought all these red herrings along. And even the fishing industry is getting upset about all this too. So my key main two main points would be, let's look at setting up cooperatives of some kind or another, which is quite possible, and also let's warn that anybody who invests in these public assets are going to find that they're going to be bought back at 1 cent a share.
Mm.